Welcome back to Energy Matters. I'm Vicky Della Gioio. So glad that you're joining again for this program. And today I have just such a delight to introduce a very, very special guest. I've known Tammy for about a year, and it has been such a joy every single time we've connected in all these different types of ways. So, Tammy De Mirza is known internationally as the Breakthrough Alchemist. She's an exceptional intuitive. She's an author and spiritual guide. She's actually an author of 3 books. I've gotten to read one of them. I'm looking forward to reading the others. Just really brilliant storyteller. She helps people unveil the unseen forces that shape their lives. Through her unique approach that taps into the conscious, subconscious, and superconscious, she assists clients in releasing limiting beliefs and embracing abundance and fulfillment. She's a top 10 Amazon bestseller and the #1 top contributor for self-development in LinkedIn. She's the author of 2 other books besides this one that she's just published. One's called The Inmate and the Medium, which is the one that I read, which is an interesting story about an adventure, basically, a relationship adventure that she was in with somebody, and 65 Signs That You're an Older Soul. And her new book is Superpowers Unleashed, Unleashed Identity and Monetize Your Senses. This book focuses on identifying and monetizing 5 clairsenses: clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairgustance. Is that right? Oh, that's probably taste, right?
It is.
Clairscent and clairsentience to
Yeah.
improve life, enhance communication, foster better relationships both personally and professionally. Her services include one-on-one sessions, retreats, and live events where she takes a compassionate yet powerful approach to personal growth. Tammy also offers a 6-week intensive class titled Awakening Your Superpowers, associated with her new book, this Amazon bestseller, Superpowers Unleashed, which helps participants discover the top senses, harness their unique superpowers, and achieve success with personalized exercises, action steps, and intuitive guidance. And I've had the privilege of coming to a couple of what she calls her old soul retreats virtually to bring some Qigong there. And what I have seen in the faces of the people who've been working with her is extraordinary. She really, truly has a gift for bringing people to their best selves. So, Tammy, a pleasure to introduce you with all of that. Uh, welcome.
I just feel honored to be in your presence, honey. I just love you so much. Thank you for being with me today and letting me support you and what you do. I know what you do is big.
Thank you so much. So, one of the things I always like to start with is to ask, since this is the Energy Matters group, when you think of energy, how would you define it, and how do you experience what does energy mean for you?
Well, I have to go to clairsentience, which is the feeling. And to me, that is the best and biggest tool that you have in life to identify energy. So, but one of the issues is, and that's one of the things that I cover in this new book, Clairsenses Identify and Monetize Your Senses, is that you have these abilities and you are reading life
Mhm.
through all of these 5 senses. And to me, the clairsentience is the one that is really giving you the most information to develop your intuitive abilities, your discernment, get rid of insecurities, and to really get to that place of surety.
Mhm.
So when you can identify energy and you're not being taught how to really use it for yourself, then
Mhm.
you will typically take on the energy of other people.
Mhm.
And that is where we get into trouble. And in that book, I even talk about if you're using these abilities haphazardly, these are some of the common issues that you're going to have. So, energy is one of the most powerful things that we have to really gain clarity, to really understand what decisions, what we want, what we don't want, whether something resonates or not. So to me, energy is one of the biggest tools that we have.
Yeah.
And if you move that into clairsentience is my ability to read the energy along with the other senses, but to feel it and to measure it and to be able to define it. Does this resonate? Does this feel good? Does it feel complicated? Does it feel easy? Does it feel simple? Does it feel, ooh, expansive? You see what I'm saying? To identify whether it is fear or love energy and whether or not what somebody is saying to you resonates.
Oh, I love that so much. And I especially love when you said, identify, is it fear or love energy? Because I think those are two very pervasive themes that are happening in our world right now, where fear can be very dominant, love can be very motivating, right? So I love that, and to be able to distinguish what do those energies feel like, besides the obvious, right? But just like be able to sense what's happening on a just a purely energetic level sounds like it's an amazing superpower. Speaking of which, when you talk about unleashing superpowers, what do you mean by superpower?
Each one of us, it's really interesting because I had this awakening at 11 years old, and people will constantly say to me, Tammy, you're gifted because I can hear, I can see, I can taste, I can smell, I feel. And that's why I'm so accurate with my clients. So people look at me as being this very different individual, but the truth is that every single one of us, every single person that will ever hear this, has these sensory superpowers. And then when you look at the five senses in the physical, and then you look at them in the non-physical, there's where you really gain the insight so
Mm.
that you will have foresight, so that you can make decisions. So when I was a really young girl and I had all of these abilities, I was using them haphazardly. That's why I included that in the book, because I know that each of you have one of these that is dominant. You have all five. So when I'm in interviews, I will say, I'm not gifted, I'm not special, I am you, and I've done the work. So the more inner work you do, the more all of a sudden this uncovering happens of, wow, I heard things, or I'm seeing things, or I'm feeling things, or I'm tasting the essence of what the person is doing. I'm tasting lies. I smell a rat. Kind of, it's really giving you this information that is, okay, namaste, I have no judgment, but you are showing me where you are. And then I get to decide what role you play, or whether or not I go to you for counsel, or
Mhm.
whether or not I use your advice. Because somebody who is really struggling with something is not a good guide for you in any aspect of life. So when you're using these, what I call superpowers, and you're using the five senses, but you're going beyond what is seen, beyond what is heard, being able to read it, then you really do have superpowers that gives you an edge in your career, in your relationships, in every single thing that you do. You've got this amazing advantage, and you're just sitting there with a peacefulness and a calmness and a surety and an empowered state of, well, I have my superpower. I will know what I need to know when you show it to me.
So
And there's peace.
superpower is also sounds like it's very integrated into the trust, right? The trust factor that recognizing that this is something that you have access to and really knowing that you can trust and follow it.
Yes. And that guides everybody home to themselves.
Mm.
Because as we know, the biggest trouble that we get into is that we're giving our power away,
Mm.
these superpowers. We're giving it away because other people look sure. And I even talk about that in the book. I did it. I learned that when I spoke and I talked about things that I knew, that sometimes the kids in school, when I was in grammar school, or even adults as I became older, didn't know themselves. And so I thought, oh, you got to pull in, you got to close your throat, you got to not speak it, because it's dangerous to have this ability. It's almost like the movie Frozen and Elsa saying, I got to hide it, conceal it, not feel it, because it might hurt you, might make you uncomfortable.
Mm.
So, what I teach my clients all the time, and that's the purpose of this book, is to put up a mirror in front of yourself. Who am I? How do I function? How do I receive information? How do I get the signs of what resonates and what doesn't?
Mhm.
when it doesn't resonate, it's fear energy. It's not the truth about you, and it's not what you came here to experience. So
Mhm.
it's a really good guide. So when I was really young, I was on the phone with a friend of mine who was very, very popular in school, and she was dumping. And as a really highly developed, not knowing it at the time, clairsentience, I took on the energy. She left the phone call elated, excited. Thank you so much. And I wanted to slit my wrist.
Mhm.
And I started asking the questions, what is this? And why did my mood change? Well, you took on the energy. Next time, be a witness. But I didn't know what that meant at 13.
Mhm.
And now I do. So
Mhm.
that's a lot of what I'm doing is teaching people not only how you assimilate information and read it, but how to discern with it, because that's where it really becomes yummy.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and then you're that, and that's that again, kind of, I keep coming back to this fear versus love, right? That's where that distinguishing can happen. Or the distinction can happen. When you were, you said you kind of became aware of this at 11. Did you have like a slow awakening, or was it a kind of wake up call of something that happened specific
Overnight,
every night?
overnight, everything in my life changed.
Wow.
Everything. I woke up knowing you are not the same little girl. And
And
at 11, you
was it
really,
a dream, or was it just a wake up in the morning and it was like I'm a new person? What how did that happen?
oh, it's a very interesting story because we really didn't go to church. And I obviously was already clairsentient because I knew that I wasn't loved in
Mhm.
my life. There was a lot of abuse, there was a lot of issues, there was a lot of fear, there was a lot of poverty, scarcity thinking. So when a pastor came and visited, a Southern Baptist pastor came and visited my grandmother, she brought him to our house. And he was sitting there with us and he's talking about God and Jesus. And I'm like, well, who are these guys and why would they love me? I don't know them. And I'm not loved. So I need to know what love is. And so then he starts talking about heaven and hell, and I'm reading that as well. And I said, don't talk to me about that. That doesn't feel good. I
Mhm.
want to know about the love.
Mhm.
So when he talked about unconditional love, I said, I want to invite love in my heart. If that means I invite Jesus in, I don't care. I want love. How will I know that I get it?
Mhm.
And he quoted one of those familiar verses and says, all things will become new. And I believed it.
Mhm.
And so my sister and I both prayed that proverbial sinner's prayer that the Southern Baptists talk about. And the next morning I woke up and went, I, I, I don't like my clothes anymore. I'm different. I don't feel the same. Why am I getting information? Why am I hearing things in my house? Why am I knowing suddenly what the problem is with one of my friends who just told me? All of a sudden, all of my five senses were awakened, and I was getting information. I was seeing things. I was hearing things. I was tasting the essence of things. I was smelling it. I was smelling the essence and the energy and measuring it even in my throat with the clairgustance. And I didn't know, Vicky. So I really struggled because I would innocently go to school and just say, hey, why didn't you tell me that your grandmother was in the hospital and almost died for 3 days? She almost died. She's been there for 3 days. Why didn't you tell me? I would have prayed for her. And he said, my grandmother's not in the hospital. What are you talking about? And then the next day he came back to me and said, my grandmother was in the hospital. She did almost die. And now my parents are mad at you and I can't play with you because they didn't want me to know.
Wow.
So you can
Oh,
see
that's an
now
amazing story.
how
Oh
that
my God.
causes you to pull in and go, why do you know something that they don't even know? And what are you supposed to do with that information?
Yeah, you
And then,
also got the message that you were somehow being harmful with the information.
yes,
You
yeah,
harmed somebody with it. So
yeah,
that I'm sure that was another piece of that's I know you. The last thing you're going to want to do is do something that would be harmful. You make somebody uncomfortable with what you read and notice, but not to hurt them. So that must have also thought, well, can this be, did it make you question, is this actually a good thing? Or did it make you feel like, well, it is what it is, and I just need to keep it quiet because you don't know what the consequences might be?
I knew that I had been forever changed. And after 2 weeks, I went to my older sister and said, Rhonda, you prayed the same prayer I did. Have you had any changes? Have you noticed anything different? She's like, no, nothing. And I'm like, oh, everything is different. Everything. What music I like, what food, what clothes, what friends, everything is so, because all of a sudden it's like you have awakened from a coma.
Mm, mm,
And then you're experiencing all of these things and you really don't have anybody to talk to about it. And that's one of the reasons that I'm writing the book, because I want everybody to know, guess what? You're me.
mhm,
You have these abilities too, and you have supernatural experiences too. So wouldn't it be great if we could identify them for you
mm,
and then you start your path of owning it
mm.
and standing in it and saying, how do I use it? Not whether or not I have it, but how do I use it for my good and to continue my journey?
One of the things I love about the work that you do, Tammy, is that, so many mediums, psychics, or intuitives that I've known, their main focus is how can I help you? How can I read you? How can I serve you in that way? But what you're doing is, it's like that proverbial, you're teaching somebody how to fish. You're not giving them the fish. You're teaching them how to access them in yourself. And I can hear and feel just as you speak the absolute commitment and utter belief that you have that everybody can access these superpowers, which is really amazing. Do you find that people tend to have one of those clair
Sense.
energies more dominant than others, and then they need to build up the others? I'm sort of thinking almost like how Qigong works with balancing the five elements. And I'm thinking, oh, this five senses, balancing the five senses in some of the same ways. And, in five elements, one feeds the other, feeds the other. And so I'm just wondering, is there a structure or pattern on terms of how these superpowers work or interplay with one another?
The first step that I would say is for you to discover what your dominant one is. And I actually have a quiz. So
Ah,
the quiz that will identify the number one dominant for you
uh-huh.
is it's a very simple quiz. It only takes about a minute, and then you're going to know what your dominant is. You're using all five, but I would say that there's usually three dominant
Okay.
and in order. So when I'm teaching my class, Awakening Your Sensory Superpowers, when I'm teaching that, I'm helping people to understand what the three dominant ones are and in what order, and then specifically how the person individually uses it.
Mm-hmm.
And then once you get that information, you start being on the lookout for, wait a minute, Tammy's right. When I hear things or I hear a lyric in the music or I hear a speaker and I ask the people next to me, did you hear what they said? They didn't hear it. So it's physical hearing and non-physical hearing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So if you can identify what that is, then you're already on the road to self-discovery. And to your point, I feel like I'm not as beneficial if I'm not helping you identify who you are. And I would say to people, if you're really looking to get in front of a highly, highly skilled medium, intuitive, as I call them, I'm all of that because a psychic is not a medium, but a medium is already psychic. So there's these levels when you get to the point to where you can communicate with the masters of the masters of the masters and the gods and then the higher self of the person and then the subconscious of the person to help them identify the puzzle and where these belief patterns started, and then they get free, they start creating miracles. So the self-identification is one of the most important things that I do and why I wrote this book. All the books that I have written, even in the 6-year memoir, I'm teaching about you. I'm letting you see yourself because we're not separate from each other. We're
Mm-hmm.
really all the same. We are spiritual beings having human experiences. So if somebody wants to take the quiz, do you want me to tell them how?
Oh, absolutely. Well, actually, what I want to do is I want to put a link in the show notes so people can
Okay,
click on it right
great,
away and get there. So
great.
yes,
All
absolutely.
right.
It's a wonderful, wonderful gift to be able to already start to identify for each of us what
Yeah.
is our dominant superpower. Um, so you have I know you have a book that you just published. Let's talk us a little bit. I mean, you've been talking some about the content, but a little bit. So I understand what drove you is that you're really wanting to awaken in people that they have this ability. Um, and I think the sort of the generosity of spirit that comes behind it is really a tribute to the work that you've done and to the level that you're at, which is really now it's about service and really helping awake people because this is a time where the possibilities around that are really not only um, exciting, but also really imperative, right? This is a time where the world kind of needs to wake up, right? That we need to end a lot of the divisiveness and the ways in which there's uh, conflict around power struggle when it doesn't have to be that way if everybody is in their place of power and has access to the resources that they need. So I'm just sort of thinking about what 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 your book when you decided to write this book, partly it was to help people wake up. Is there anything else that drove you into writing this third book that you have that has been doing so
Thank you, because Vicky, I actually have two other books that are ready to be published. They're written. I was about to do one that was again identifying spiritual codependency and the patterns of older souls. And then all of a sudden I woke up this morning and I said, what do I need to know? And I heard, write your book about the five senses and do that first.
mm,
There are people, and I could get emotional because I was feeling the energy. There are people that are crying that don't understand why they're living small, why they feel like they're in prison, why they keep having the same patterns, and they're questioning themselves and they're insecure and they don't know that they have their own inner guidance system, and they don't know that it's an intelligence that is far beyond what you can measure or dream. Bring this information out to the public so that they can tap into who they are. And then that's your gift right now. Don't worry about the other two books, you'll get them out
mm,
eventually.
mm,
So I want to tell a story about my internationally known, she's a Grammy nominated, Monique. Oh my God, Monique is like amazing. She was my speaking coach. And she was talking to me about me formulating like a TEDx style 15-minute talk. And she said, give me an example. And I said, well, you're a clairaudient. And she said, I'm what? And I said, yeah, you're a clairaudient. And I said, and let me tell you something interesting about this, Monique. And she said, what? And I said, every one of these, the four of them have a location in the body. The fifth one, clairsentience, that I talk about is all over and connects all of them together to the point of what you asked intuitively. So I said, what is interesting is that clairaudience is not inside the ears. It is on this bone behind the ears.
mm,
And she started crying.
mm,
And I said, what's behind your tears? And she said, Tammy, every single time that I got up to sing opera, traveling around the world, no matter where I was, and if I was even doing something, a production constantly, I would take these two fingers and rub these bones.
mm,
So what that really, I cried with her because I went, Monique, you and others like you that are using these abilities and tapping into doing things with your physical body that you don't even know connects you to your abilities. This is why I'm being called to do this.
mm,
This is why this is so important. It's not as important that I tell you what I know. It's more important that I let you know what you know
mhm,
and then teach you the skills and how to access it, identify it, and then monetize with it and make money or have deeper, intimate relationships. It's this wonderful, beautiful world that is far deeper than a personality test can go.
mm,
It's putting up a mirror and going, how do I function? And then once you understand how this information is, then you can sit in front of anybody and know what they need to hear or see or smell or taste or feel. And then how you communicate with them is not to manipulate, it is to engage so
mhm,
that it's really clear for them what it is that you're offering if you're in a business, what it is that you are offering in a relationship. And then they get to really choose from a conscious level with the information. You've
Mhm.
educated them by reaching them, by knowing how they assimilate information. And once you get these tools, use it in everything,
Mhm.
every single thing, every single conversation.
Mhm.
It's amazing. And it
Yeah.
just opens up the entire world. And for those who are suffering because they feel so different, this becomes more fun.
Yeah. Well, I know that a lot of that you have a group groups that you work with that you call old souls, and and so I feel it feels like this is connected in terms of what when you find somebody who is really starting to tap into some of these senses, but then do you find that people, and I find this sometimes with my students, do you find that they bump into trust issues where it's like, well, I don't know, that's just something I just thought of, or something where they dismiss it, they distrust something that might be coming from a very deep inner knowing, but they don't quite connect the dots, or they don't quite know what that feels like. How do you deal with the lack of trust or the resistance that people have? Particularly, I think you talk about old souls being exhausted and being feeling like they don't quite belong, and other aspects that they deal with. And so we should probably start with saying, what do you mean by old souls? And then go ahead. I have 1,000 questions, clearly. So
Well, the second book that I wrote is called 65 Signs That You're an Older Soul, and there's more than that. So, what happened to me in 2013 was I was like, I don't want you to send me people that are playing at this. I don't want to be a medium for people that just want superficial information. I want to go deeper. I want the people that are very serious about growing. They're hungry. And then in 2013, that happened. Right after I asked for that, the only people that ever came to me were older souls. And you hear the term "you're an old soul." Well, if you really don't understand what that means, you're going to struggle. And there are commonalities that you would not believe, and you check almost every single box.
mm,
So I found myself repeating over and over and over again what the symptoms are. And then I realized, wow, you have compiled a whole book's worth, probably 5 books worth of commonalities. And now you know very clearly what older souls are. When I educate people and say, you're showing the symptom of being an older soul, you're showing the symptom and then they start to feel like they belong. So then that's where the older souls
and
tribe.
what some of those, I know that you've got 5 books worth, but what are some of the symptoms that people might self-identify as being an older soul?
Okay, so I'm just going to give you like 3 to 5 right now that are coming up right now intuitively for your group. Feeling like you don't belong, feeling very alone in a crowd, no matter where you are, you have a hard time articulating if it's like, why did you take that way? It's the most innocent, loving way. I'm trying to help you. I feel this pressure to be of assistance, so I'm going to use my abilities to see what you need, and then we become servants. We
Mm,
become codependent
mm.
and we're not discerning and using what our abilities are about. Now, I think I just gave you about 8, but these commonalities are really isolating and painful because one of the big ones is we have this awareness that we are one and that we're supposed to be on the playground playing with each other and sitting around the campfire and singing kumbaya. And when we can't find somebody to do it with, we are suffering more than most.
Mm,
Why can't you just love me? Why
mm,
can't we just love each other? It's very childlike, innocent. Let's
mhm,
just love each other. Why do you hurt each other? Why do you talk about each other? They have high moral codes
mm,
and they don't understand why people are acting up or hurting each other. We're traumatized by it.
mhm,
So
mhm.
there's like 14, I think, that I've said.
That was very rich. Thank you.
You're welcome. It's good, isn't it? I mean, I love giving this information because people are going, they're coming to me and they're saying, "You were talking to me," and I'm like, "Yeah, no shit, Sherlock."
Yeah, there's a method to my madness.
Yeah, there's a reason I'm talking to you like this because I've been there. And then this doubt and fear, I have to tell you an interesting part of this. I walked away from being who I was for 13 years. I shook my fist at God and said, I'm trying my best to fit into this world and I don't fit in and I would rather go. But since I'm here and I'm in this very toxic, abusive relationship, I've got to get my own act together.
Mhm.
So leave me alone. Do not send anybody to me. So for 13 years, I didn't pray. I didn't talk. I didn't ask for guidance. I just learned self-love.
Mhm.
And I was taking care of my own life. And I got a divorce and I bought a home and I started a business and I was doing all these things. And then one day I had said, if the church and religious things will teach you a lot about judgment,
Mhm.
and I couldn't go there. So I knew I didn't fit in there either because I was about not judging people and not condemning people. And I was like, I'm all confused about what this love is and even what the church says love is. But if I can do this with pure love, your kind of love that is inclusive, that is non-judgmental, bring it back. And believe it or not, I was in a fabric store. I was a master seamstress, self-cut designer. And the fabric store owner said, Tammy, I got a book for you. And I said, what is it? He said, I'm not going to tell you. When are you coming back? I said, 2 days from now. He said, I will have the book. And as soon as I touched it, I went, uh-oh, electricity. And I went, uh-oh, this is all awakening. So I went through the exact same process that everybody does. Was that random? Did I really hear that? Can I trust it? How do I know that that was not my ego or my thoughts or me just making this up? So I went through that for years. And I learned a lot of techniques
Mhm.
and tools to use for anybody. So I'm so thankful that I separated myself for 13 years and then went back and then went through. Because if I would have just been doing that since I was 11, I wouldn't have compassion. I wouldn't have empathy. I wouldn't be able to say, hey, there's a tool for that.
Mhm.
This is what I was given. Does this help you? And if you need 5 tools, I'll give you 5 tools. So going through that process myself was living it, breathing it, eating it, knowing how insecure we feel,
Mhm.
knowing how much we are taught to question ourselves, not think for ourselves. And this is moving people into I am home and I am that magic presence. And I do have the answers because one of the things that's so painful is spiritual teachers, well meaning, say you have the answers within. Well, if we're not connecting them to how to get those answers, then it's torture. What do you mean I have the answers? Where are the answers? How do I know? So
Makes
this
people
goes
feel
with
like there's something wrong with them, right?
yes, but
Yeah,
actually,
tap
they're
in.
going through what every human, because we've been brainwashed in so many ways. Let other people think for you. Let us tell you what to believe
Mhm.
instead of, oh, I know, I feel it, I sense it, I smell it.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
I really understand. I love, love, love what you're saying here. It's so vitally important. Do you ever feel for yourself? Do you ever go into self-doubt? Not so much about your ability when you're reading somebody or something like that, or that when you're sort of giving information, but what happens with your own inner process? Because I know in your first book you wrote some about that and sort of the questioning, the back and forth. But do you still go through that? Do you still sometimes doubt yourself, and how do you pull yourself back to center?
that's a really, really good question. And I just went through something really big in December, and I was going on a marketer's cruise. And my son-in-law, he was only 38, had a stroke. And my daughter with 3 children and one of them, a barely born, needed me more than she ever needed me in her entire life. I am that safety blanket and that safety net and that influence in the kids' lives and in their lives. And yet I was asking, why are you telling me that I need to go on the cruise? It didn't make logical sense. So I was questioning, believe it or not, I have tools. And one of them is that your body is a pendulum. And every single time I used that technique, I was getting, yes, you're going on the cruise. For one, I had been so sick and then had an ear infection. I need the rest. And then two, there were people that I was supposed to meet that was going to change the trajectory of my life, which caused this to come into being.
Mm,
So it's getting beyond what is even logical, what makes sense, and tapping into the unlimited resources of what is known.
mm,
And I went through that and I'm like, this does not make sense. And so I called my daughter and I said, you're probably even going to be angry, but I'm going to tell you, I've tested this over and over and over, and I have to go on the cruise. And because I did, not only did my life change, but his father came down and became a caretaker. And if I would have been here, he would not have bonded with his father.
mm,
So the unlimited resources knows more than our limited mind. Even me, as far as I've gone, as sure as I am, as quick as I make decisions, I know, and I just go with those decisions. Those decisions change your lives.
mm,
They set you on a different continuum and trajectory. And I am so thankful because he flew in the day I flew out
mm,
and stayed. And then there was this immediate closeness and bonding that he would not have had because I would have been in the way.
mhm.
So
Beautiful, beautiful.
it's rare. It
Mhm,
is rare, but in a case like that where you really, really love your kids and you want to balance their needs with yours,
yeah.
if you really use these five senses to get your answers and even the body and feeling it, then you're clear. And she understood and she said, you got to do what you got to do. And I said, neither one of us know why. And then a day later, she told Tanner, Tammy's mom's not coming. She's not going to be able to help because he was still in the hospital. And he called his dad, and his dad said, I'm coming right now.
Mm.
It was better than me.
Yeah, of course. It was healing for, on all levels. Beautiful story. Well, on
Yeah.
that note, I think that this is, I mean, I feel like we could have many, many more conversations, and we probably will, and probably here even on Energy Matters. But thank you so much for your time, Tammy. Are there any final words that you have that you want people to think about or know?
Yes, there's a couple of free things that your people can get.
Mm.
So I'm going to tell you those two. One is the quiz so that you know what your dominant sensory superpower is. And if you buy this book or the journal, because there's a journal that goes with it, if you buy either one of those, either now before October the 1st or even after, you get a free 90-minute masterclass on
Wonderful.
you, where I'm going to take questions and answers. I'm going to teach about these five senses. I'm going to helping you awaken to, wow, I'm more than I thought,
Mm.
and I can do this. And so those free resources are very powerful. So even what you do is you just send info@tammydemirza.com and show me a picture of you with the book or proof of the purchase. You're going to get the invite. So if you buy it after October the 1st, you'll get the class. You just won't be live with me where you can ask me questions.
So you'll get the recording.
And you'll get the recording. And there is a private global community where you can consistently speak with me about what you're learning and how you're growing.
Beautiful. What a generous offer. So we're going to put links to the book and Tammy's email as well as the link to the quiz on the show notes. Thank you so much, Tammy, for your time. This has been absolutely beautiful. I so appreciate you.
You know, I love you so much. I can't wait to see you soon.
I know, me too. Bye for now.